Tenant you.
The Significant Link Between Eviction and Suicide, written by Amanda Waldrop on June 1st, 2019. When Kimberly Rapp saw how high the suicide rates were in Washington County, Oregon, she vowed to do something about it. Rapp is the supervisor of the county's public health program and the county's epidemiologist, which makes her responsible for tracking and responding to diseases that affect public health, such as annual flu outbreaks. She never imagined that investigating suicide would become a key part of her work. The number of people dying by suicide in Washington County began climbing dramatically in 2009. That year, 55 people died by suicide. The numbers continued to climb until they hit a peak of 96 people dying by their own hand in 2012, or approximately 18 per 100,000. That is well above the national average of 13 per 100,000. That's not just kind of bad, says Kimberly Rapp, Washington County's epidemiologist. That's just astronomically bad. Starting in 2014, Rapp began accompanying the county's death investigators to death scenes to see what clues or evidence were present in the room where a person was last living. She visited more than 200 scenes in a 2-year period. From these visits, she developed a list of 46 risk factors that contributed to a person's risk of death by suicide. Among the list of risk factors are those that one might expect: depression, social isolation, and problems with drug addiction or family or money. But one leaped out to Rapp and others. It was a quiet social problem that has started to drastically affect increasing numbers of poor people in recent years: eviction. Rapp found that eviction was a prevalent risk factor in 104 suicides in Washington counties between 2014 and 2018. That included people who had experienced an eviction in the last 2 weeks of their lives or in the years shortly before. I was really surprised by how prevalent eviction as a crisis and ongoing housing issues were directly impacting our suicide rates in Washington County, Rapp admits. Evictions are stressful, especially for low-income people who do not necessarily have money saved to pay for moving costs, a security deposit, and their first and last month's rent. If someone is forcibly removed from their home as the result of an eviction, which happens to about 1% of the Oregon population each year, it caps off, at times, months of worry and stress about the loss of one's home. But Oregon also has no-cause evictions, which means that a landlord can give a renter notice to move out without providing any reason. In Portland, due to reforms passed in 2015, renters who are given eviction notices must now be given 90 days notice to move. In the vast majority of cases, a landlord can simply send the renter an eviction notice and the renter has to move. In cases of non-payment or compliance issues, the landlord and the renter make arrangements to solve the problem. But in cases where that does not happen, a landlord can file the eviction in court and pursue a court order to legally require the renter to move. A renter can challenge the eviction in court to have the eviction revoked or to have the move-out date changed. If the court sides with the lawyer, the renter can then be removed from the property. A notice is then attached to the front door of the rental stating the move-out date. From that point, the process only becomes more stressful and harried for renters. The renters have 4 days to move. If they do not, sheriff's deputies can go onto the property and forcibly remove the person, giving them only a few minutes to collect some belongings. It is typical from that point for the renter to be locked out of their home and to be allowed to retrieve their belongings only with the sheriff's deputy present. LeVar Edmond is a sociologist and researcher at the Eviction Lab, which is based at Princeton University and maintains the first national database of evictions, with records of evictions dating back to 2000. He argues against a dangerous assumption that once someone is evicted, they will simply find another place to live. That's not necessarily how it works, he says, noting that an eviction is on a person's court record and will show up on any background check that a future landlord makes. Oftentimes, he tells me, people who are evicted move into more substandard housing or become homeless. Homelessness is not much of a leap in mind, he explains, since many renters are forcibly evicted because of not paying the rent. The Eviction Lab and the work of its founder, Matthew Desmond, author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning book Evicted, has raised awareness of over the last few years about eviction as a dire social problem. Desmond's research has shown clear links between eviction and increased rates of stress, depression, anxiety, and other mental illness that lasts for up to 2 years after an individual is evicted. The first comprehensive study analyzing eviction as a risk factor for suicide was published in 2015 study in the American Journal of Public Health. The researchers identified 929 suicides that had eviction and foreclosure as the precipitating event leading to the death. Nearly 80% of the suicides took place before the person actually lost their housing. And 37% of people who had experienced eviction or foreclosure within 2 weeks of their deaths. One of the main conclusions of the study is that during times of economic crisis, suicide prevention measures need to be increased. In January 2016, a town hall meeting was held to discuss the increase in homelessness and lack of affordable housing in the Portland area, a crisis that had quickly escalated in Portland that year. At the meeting, Marissa Madrigal, Multnomah County's chief operating officer, told a story about her friend Paul. Paul lived in a small, dark basement apartment with his cat. It was not much, Madrigal explained, but he had carved out a safe home after many, many different struggles. He had lived there near Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard for 10 years. The apartment had problems with mold, so he told his landlord and asked that repairs be made. The landlord gave Paul a no-cause eviction. Madrigal helped him get a lawyer. The apartment's air was tested. She and other friends helped him as much as they could. They made a plan for Paul to stay at another friend's in case he had to move. As long as someone checked on him, Madrigal said, there was an outlet for him to manage the stress and feel that things would be okay in time. Their efforts were unsuccessful. The day before he had to move out, Madrigal said, the landlord posted another eviction notice on the door. Paul died by suicide the next day. The struggle and the pain of it just wore him down, Madrigal said. When she spoke about eviction at the town hall meeting, this is a life and death issue. This is not just an annoyance or an inconvenience. When Rep accompanies Deputy Medical Examiner Charles Lovato on death scenes investigations, she says that she can feel the suffering in the rooms where people ended their lives. People often leave eviction papers on their dining room or coffee tables out in the open where anyone else can see them, as if the person had just set them down there. In some cases, the papers were still nailed to the front door. In response to what she learned in the research, Rep has worked with the Washington County Sheriff's Office, which delivers court-ordered evictions, to have the phone number for a crisis line printed at the top of all eviction paperwork that a renter is given. Members of the Washington County Mental Health Response Team, which intervenes when people are experiencing mental health crisis, will now go along with the sheriff's deputy who is serving an eviction if they know that the person is likely to be extremely upset. Since the intervention was implemented, the number of those who die by suicide in Washington County with eviction as a risk factor has fallen by 25% each year. Since Washington County's suicide intervention efforts began in 2015, about 5 deaths with eviction as a risk factor have been prevented each year. It could be life-threateningly bad news, Rep says, of eviction. If putting a piece of paper in eviction paperwork saves even one life, we're going to do it. It could mean the difference between life and death to someone. I had seen this article a few years ago, and I really wanted to discuss this, and I wanted to show to the individual, all individuals, and especially renters, and maybe hopefully management can take a look at the devastating effect of simply throwing somebody out, and I would argue that maybe in Ontario and Canada, we don't have no-cause evictions, but we definitely do have rent evictions, and we've been experiencing it over here at 301 Dixon Road for the past 2.5 years. I think they started on October 2nd, the renovations, and it has not stopped, and now they're telling us there's likely another 5 years worth of renovations because they want to do a building in the front of the building, which would be right in my face. So a lot of people are completely unhappy with this one, and you simply can't sleep during the day. You can't, there is just simply no rest. There's garbage everywhere. The place is not being maintained properly. Our home has been stripped away from us, and not only that, our dignity as well. We're not allowed to experience a safe home. That safe aspect has been taken away from us as soon as they purchased it. And they go out of their way to make sure that you understand this is not your home. Shutting down services all the time. Any small matter is blown out of proportion. They lie to your faces. They refuse to repair things. We have been evicted from a quality home, and we have now been introduced into a poor quality home. And it is only getting more and more expensive because they're increasing to the max every year, and some of the tenants are now getting an above guideline rent increase, which to me would be the equivalency of having a waiter spit in your face and expecting a tip. Please share your thoughts at the bottom, and let me know what you think. And if there's any other news that's coming along, please swing it by. We'll take a look at it, and maybe I'll narrate it. Thank you very much. Have yourself a great day.